Tiffany Henyard actually has two political jobs on two public payrolls. As mayor of South Suburban Dolton, or as she calls herself, Super Mayor.
Dawn and Scott, the meeting wrapped up early because two trustees, as you mentioned, did not show up. Chris Gonzalez and Carmen Carlisle. Without them, not enough board members were present to make official decisions.
It's hard to imagine a political figure with more swirling controversy than Tiffany Henyard, the embattled mayor of Dolton, Illinois, from alleged corruption to eviction scandals. Her name has become synonymous with chaos in the small village she governs. But just when you think the drama couldn't escalate any further, the FBI has stepped in, accusing her of corruption on a scale that has left residents in shock. And that's just the beginning of her latest woes.
Turn up more and more information. They'll turn up more leads. They may turn up more witnesses. They may find a cooperator. They may find an informant, all which will benefit the investigation tremendously.
But based on what we know now, if you're Tiffany Henyard, how are you feeling?
Let's start with the most jaw-dropping revelation. Tiffany Henyard, the so-called super mayor, is now facing allegations of embezzling millions from public funds. The FBI's investigation uncovered what they describe as a calculated scheme to funnel taxpayer money into personal accounts and unauthorized spending, according to sources close to the investigation. The figure being floated is close to $2 million, a staggering amount for a small village already struggling with dire financial problems. Residents, already frustrated by years of questionable leadership, were blindsided by the scale of the alleged theft. One anonymous official described the situation as a massive breach of public trust, adding, "This isn't just about mismanagement. This is how right theft, plain and simple." The accusations come at a time when Dolton's finances were already under scrutiny. A preliminary financial report from earlier this year revealed that the village's general fund had dropped from a surplus of over $5 million in 2022 to a deficit of nearly $4 million by mid-2020. Four critics have long accused Henyard of reckless spending. But this new twist, allegations that she siphoned public money for personal use, has turned frustration into outright fury. One local resident summed it up during a public meeting, saying she's supposed to be fixing the streets, not lining her pockets. Meanwhile, calls for her resignation have grown louder, with community members demanding accountability and an end to what some are calling a Henyard era of corruption.
Very appreciative to receive the information today. We have the best mayor ever. I've been here since 1993, and she's the best we ever had.
You know, you're doing a lot of programs, good programs for the senior citizens, and you're doing a lot of programs for people who are on a fixed budget. Mm-hmm. But what about the people, the blue collar people who are still carrying this?
This town, the timing of these revelations couldn't be worse for Henyard, as they coincide with her audacious announcement to seek re-election. Yes, you heard that correctly. Despite being at the center of multiple scandals, Henyard recently declared her intention to run for another term as mayor, but instead of rallying support, this move seems to have further enraged her critics. "She has the nerve to ask for our votes while stealing from us," said one Dolton resident during a heated town hall meeting. The announcement has been described as tone deaf at best, with some calling it outright delusional. Making matters even more absurd is the irony of her personal financial troubles. While Henyard continues to rake in a six-figure salary from her dual roles as Dolton's mayor and Thornton Township supervisor, she's also facing an eviction lawsuit from her own landlord. According to court documents, Henyard and boyfriend Camel Woods stopped paying rent on their Dolton home back in August. Their landlord, Janetta Hull, claimed they now owe her thousands of pounds in back rent and late fees. Paul has described the situation as a nightmare, revealing that Henyard and Woods not only failed to pay but also changed the locks on the house to keep her out. "I have nowhere else to turn," Paul said in a recent interview, adding that she fears losing the property to foreclosure because of the unpaid rent.
Like a misspending of tax funds. I think that's the biggest concern.
The details of the eviction saga have only added fuel to the fire for Henyard's critics. Hull, who once considered Henyard a friend, said she reluctantly agreed to rent the home to the mayor back in 2021 after being pressured to cancel an agreement with another tenant at the time she believed Tenor would be a reliable tenant, given her prominent position and substantial income. But Hull's trust was misplaced. when property taxes forced her to raise the rent by just £200 earlier this year. Woods reportedly told her they couldn't afford it since then. Payments have completely stopped, leaving Hall scrambling to cover her own expenses for someone making over $300,000 a year. This is unacceptable, Hall said. She's supposed to be a leader, but she doesn't even pay her bills. Hall's frustration is shared by many in Dolton, where residents have grown weary of Henyard antics, from her lavish spending on taxpayer-funded parties to allegations of mismanagement. The list of grievances against her keeps growing. One of the most outrageous examples came earlier this year when it was revealed that Henyard had spent over £33,000 on Amazon purchases using the village's credit card. The spending spree included everything from decorative items to what critics described as completely unnecessary luxury goods. She's acting like the village is her personal piggy bank, said one trust during a public hearing.
I do not handle anything as relates to with credit cards. As you heard me speak today in my board meeting about, I do not handle that.
Some of those charges are for you, though.
No, sir.
You didn't go to Las Vegas? What is that?
No comment.
But it's not just the financial scandals that have people talking. Henyard's behavior at public meetings has also drawn widespread criticism over the past year. Her clashes with Dolton trustees have become the stuff of legend, with meetings often devolving into shouting matches and walkouts. In one particularly outrageous incident, Henyard called the police on workers who were removing banners with her face on them. The banners emblazoned with her title of super mayor had been put up without board approval, and the vendor who created them claimed they were owed nearly $20,000 in unpaid bills when trustees ordered the banners removed. Henyard reportedly demanded that police arrest the workers, calling the removal theft of government property. Video footage of the incident shows her arguing with officers, saying, "Press charges on them if you have to. Nobody messes with my property." The situation escalated further when Henyard appointed a new police chief without board approval, sparking yet another firestorm. The appointee, Ronald Berkshire, was found to be inactive according to state law enforcement records, meaning he wasn't legally qualified to serve as chief. Despite this, Henyard insisted on the appointment, leading to a legal standoff between her and the trustees. The Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board even sent a letter urging Henyard to remove Berg from the position, but she refused. Instead, she doubled down, accusing the trustees of undermining her authority.
Yep, Ray and Mike, Thornton Township Supervisor Tiffany Henyard wanted the Board of Trustees to approve some events that she wants the township to pay for, but none of the trustees showed up for this special meeting tonight. That left the meeting canceled and Henyard with the floor.
With meetings frequently canceled due to lack of quorum and key decisions delayed over legal disputes, residents are growing increasingly frustrated. Nothing gets done because it's all about her, said one resident during a recent town hall meeting. We're paying for her ego while our streets crumble and our schools suffer. As if all this weren't enough, Henyard has also been accused of using intimidation tactics to silence her critics in a now infamous 90-minute Facebook Live rant. She threatened to have her political opponents arrested, accusing them of orchestrating a smear campaign against her. "I will be seeking rests for individuals involved," she said during the broadcast. "I will be pressing charges. It's a lot, and that's just me telling you a little bit." The video, which quickly went viral, was widely criticized as yet another example of Henyard's erratic behavior. "She's lost touch with reality," one resident commented, "who threatens to arrest people for disagreeing with them. This isn't a dictatorship."
Reporting for nearly 2 years on allegations of corruption surrounding Henyard in her capacity as Dolton mayor and Thornton Township supervisor. And now we've learned from multiple sources that federal agents are in fact interviewing witnesses as part of a possible investigation that may or may not result in charges.
The FBI's ongoing investigation into Henyard administration has only added to the tension. Federal agents have reportedly supped financial records from both Dolton and Thornton Township, as well as documents related to Henyard's personal spending. While no charges have been filed, yet sources close to the investigation say it's only a matter of time. Despite the mounting pressure, Henyard remains defiant. In a recent statement, She dismissed the allegations against her as politically motivated and vowed to fight back. "I have done nothing wrong," she said. "This is all part of a smear campaign by my opponent who are jealous of my success." She even went so far as to compare herself to former U.S. President Donald Trump, claiming she would win re-election in a landslide despite the controversies. "Just like Trump, I'm coming in strong," she said during a public meeting. "The people know the truth, and they will stand by me."
That's right, John and Terrence. Tonight's meeting had a much different tone than what we've experienced previously at Dolton City Council meetings. Now, the room was full of Henyard supporters, and they wanted me to be sure to tell you that they applauded for her several times as she talked about the township being in a great place financially. Thornton Township Supervisor Tiffany Henyard.
But will they for many in Dolton? The answer is a resounding no. Residents are fed up with what they see as a never-ending circus, and the calls for Henyard's resignation are growing louder by the day as the drama unfolds. One thing is clear: Tiffany Henyard isn't going down without a fight. Whether it's the eviction lawsuit, the FBI investigation, or the growing backlash from her own community, she's determined to hold on to power at all costs. But with so many scandals piling up, even her staunchest supporters are beginning to question how much longer she can last. And with the next election just months away, the people of Dolton will soon have their say. Will Henyard's bold claims of a re-election landslide come true, or will her scandals finally catch up to her? Only time will tell.
If the board do not show up, we are not able to pay bills. We are not able to handle the business.
Journey into politics began with bold promises and a carefully crafted image of herself as a champion of the underdog. She presented herself as the fresh face of leadership, someone who could revitalize Dolton and Thornton Township with her youthful energy and modern ideas. But as her critics would later point out, her political ascent was marked by a series of moves that seemed less about serving the community and more about consolidating her own power. From a start, her focus was clear control, and she wasted no time in making sure she had it. One of her earliest, most controversial strategies was her approach to immense. Henyard quickly learned that placing loyalists in key positions could strengthen her grip on local government. She began systematically replacing those who might challenge her authority with individuals who would not only support her decisions, but also help shield her from accountability. This wasn't just about filling vacancies, it was about building a protective wall around herself. Trustees, department heads, and even law enforcement officials were carefully selected to ensure their allegiance to Henyard over the public. They were meant to serve, Gardner says.
Very disturbing to hear these things or to kind of see some of the receipts that appear to be connected to it. And I think the taxpayers really deserve better than that.
Nowhere was this more evident than in her relationship with the Dolton Police Department. Early in her tenure, Henyard made it clear that she intended to take full control of law enforcement in the village, a move that would later become one of the most criticized aspects of her administration. She appointed a series of police chiefs, each more controversial than the last. Most recently, her decision to install Ronald Bergs as chief sparked outrage, not just because of his questionable qualifications, but because it represented yet another example of her bypassing established procedures to push through her agenda. Berg, whose certification as a law enforcement officer had lapsed, was handpicked by Henyard, despite objections from trustees and state officials. Critics argued that Berg's appointment was less about his ability to lead and more about his willingness to follow Henyard's orders without question. This pattern of prioritizing loyalty over competence extended beyond the police department. Henyard's former assistant, Carmen Carroll, who initially worked closely with the mayor, eventually became one of her most vocal critics. Carroll has described her time working under Henyard as chaotic and alleged that the mayor often demanded unquestioning loyalty from her staff, even when it meant crossing ethical lines. It wasn't about what was best for the residents, Carlisle said in an interview. It was about what was best for her. If you didn't fall in line, you were out.
Gardner says he's been harassed and his business raided and shut down by Dolton police. He believes because he refused to make a donation to a civic event sponsored by Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard.
And I talked to a couple of agents and I explained them what was going on. I gave them all my paperwork.
This need for control and loyalty inevitably led to clashes with the Dolton Board of Trustees. The trustees, whose jobs is to provide oversight and ensure the mayor's decisions align with the community's best interests, found themselves increasingly at odds with Henyard. Meetings often turned into shouting matches with Henyard, accusing the trustees of obstructing her vision for the village, and the trustees accusing her of overstepping her authority. Tensions came to a head earlier this year when Henyard filed a lawsuit against several trustees claiming they were illegally holding meetings without her presence. The trustees were back accusing Henyard of attempting to undermine their work and prevent them from holding her accountable. One of the most dramatic moments in this ongoing feud occurred during a public meeting where Hen arrived late only to storm out after being jerried by residents. The meeting, which had been moved to a larger venue after the Illinois Attorney General ruled that the village's usual meeting space violated open meetings laws, was packed with residents eager to voice their frustrations. As Henyard attempted to regain control of the room, she was met with boos and shouts from the audience. "This is an embarrassment to Dolton," one resident said. "Why won't you step down?" Henyard, visibly frustrated, accused the trustees of orchestrating the chaos and vowed to continue fighting for her position.
Your scheduled board meetings. I don't care if you agree or disagree, but you must show up to say yes or no, or vote present, but show up.
But even as Henyard fights to maintain her grip on power, the cracks in her administration are becoming harder to ignore. The financial scandals alone have left many questioning her ability to govern beyond the allegations of embezzlement. There are numerous examples of reckless spending that seem to prioritize Henyard's personal image over the needs of the community. One particularly egregious example is the £33,000 she spent on Amazon purchases using the village's credit card. While some of the items were reportedly for village events, the lack of transparency and accountability has raised red flags. Trustees have repeatedly called for an independent audit of the village's finances, but Henyard has resisted these efforts, further fueling suspicions of wrongdoing. And then there's the matter of her re-election campaign, which has been widely criticized as tone-deaf. Given the current state of the village, Henyard's decision to run for another term has baffled even some of her former supporters, who argue that her focus should be on addressing the numerous issues facing Dolton rather than campaigning for re-election. Her campaign slogan, "Fighting for the People," has been met with skepticism, with many residents questioning who exactly she's fighting for.
Supervisor Tiffany Henyard.
Were there any questions that you have at all?
No, right now I'm going to give her a chance.
And this meeting comes one day after Fox 32's Dane Placco exposed what some are calling misappropriation of funds after traveling to Washington, D.C. in January for a U.S. conference of mayors, according to credit card records of
Hen's opponents have wasted no time capitalizing on her scandals. Trustee Jason House, who is running against her in the upcoming election, has positioned himself as the anti-Henyard candidate, promising to restore transparency and accountability to the village government. House, who has been a vocal critic of Henyard's leadership, has gained significant support from residents who are fed up with the current administration. "We need real leadership," House said during a campaign event, "not someone who uses their position to enrich themselves and silence their critics. Dolton deserves better." But Henyard's critics aren't just limited to the political arena. Even her landlord, Janetta Hull, has joined the chorus of voices calling for accountability. Hull, who once considered Henyard a friend, has become one of her most outspoken detractors since filing an eviction lawsuit against the mayor. In a recent interview, Hull described her frustration with Henyard's refusal to pay rent and her apparent disregard for the financial strain has caused.
And we've learned the FBI has been using electronic surveillance as part of its investigation. Agents are asking questions about Henyard's alleged use of taxpayer dollars and resources, including massive spending on out-of-town trips.
As the scandals continue to mount, Henyard's once ironclad grip on power appears to be slipping. Her allies are dwindling, her opponents are gaining momentum, and the investigations into her administration show no signs of slowing down. And yet, despite all of this, Henyard remains defiant. In a recent Facebook post, she dismissed the allegations against her as fake news and accused her critics of being driven by jealousy and a desire to see her fail. "They can try to tear me down," she wrote, "but I'm not going anywhere. The people of Dolton need me." It's a bold statement, but one that rings hollow for many residents who feel abandoned by the leader for them. The question isn't whether Henyard will step down, but when. And as the FBI investigation news and the eviction lawsuit moves forward, the walls are closing in on the self-proclaimed supermayor, whether she's removed from office, voted out, or forced to resign. One thing is clear: Tiffany Henyard's time at the top is running out.